The story in 2 Kings 6 is one of the most heartbreaking moments in Israel's history. It takes place during a time when the Aramean army laid siege to the city of Samaria, cutting off all food supplies and trapping the people inside. What follows is a portrait of a nation pushed to the brink, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The siege and the famine, the Arameans, surrounded Samaria for so long that the city's resources were completely exhausted. Food became scarce, then impossible to find. Prices skyrocketed. People were starving. The Bible describes the famine as so severe that even the most undesirable items were being sold at outrageous prices. It paints a picture of a society collapsing under the weight of hunger and hopelessness. This wasn't just a military crisis, it was a spiritual crisis, the result of years of turning away from God. A king confronted with horror one day. As the king of Israel walked along the city wall, a woman cried out to him for help. Expecting a plea for food or protection, the king asked what troubled her. What she told him was so shocking, so heartbreaking, that the king tore his clothes in grief and despair. 2 women, driven by starvation, had made a desperate and tragic agreement involving their own children. The situation had become so dire that even the king, who was supposed to lead and protect, felt utterly powerless. This moment wasn't recorded to sensationalize suffering. It was recorded to show just how far the nation had fallen and how devastating the consequences of the siege had become. The king's anger and misplaced blame overwhelmed by what he heard. The king blamed the prophet Elisha, believing that God's refusal to intervene was somehow Elisha's fault. In his grief and frustration, he vowed to take Elisha's life. But Elisha remained calm. He knew that God had not abandoned his people, even in their darkest hour. A promise of deliverance, Elisha delivered a message of hope. By the next day, food would be plentiful again. The famine would end. God would break the siege. It seemed impossible. Unbelievable. Ridiculous, even. But God was already at work. God's intervention. That very night, God caused the Aramean army to hear the sound of approaching forces, a noise so terrifying that they fled in panic, abandoning their camp, supplies, and weapons. When the starving people of Samaria discovered the empty camp, they rushed out and found food, clothing, and resources in abundance. Just as Elisha had said, the famine ended in a single day. The meaning behind the story. 2. This difficult passage is not meant to shock for the sake of shock. It serves as a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences of turning away from God, the suffering that can come from prolonged conflict and siege, the depth of human desperation in times of crisis, God's ability to bring deliverance even when hope seems impossible, the importance of trusting God's word even when circumstances look hopeless. The story ends not in despair, but in restoration, a reminder that God can bring light into the darkest situations.